Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I guess I'm alone in the conference room so I can take this mask off. Just thought I would hop on to YouTube this afternoon before the sun goes down. Just have a quick little chat with my YouTube community, with my YouTube friends and family, my little community here. So welcome. If you have not already hit the like button, now would be a great time to hit that like button. If you haven't already done so, now would be a great time to hit the subscribe button. I'm not going to be on here too long. I've got other engagements to get to, but I thought it would be great to just hop on here and have a little chat with you all about what's been going on in the world, answer maybe a couple super chats, and then be on my way. But I thought, why not talk with my community? Why not have a good little afternoon conversation? So, what's new, folks? What's new? Well, a couple things are new. One thing that's new that I just saw, kind of a historical item, is that the city council of the city of Greensboro, North Carolina, has passed a resolution apologizing for the Greensboro massacre. Now, it's not getting a lot of press. It's a local news story. But at the time that it happened, the Greensboro massacre was national news. 1979. In Greensboro, North Carolina, the Communist Workers' Party, which was a Maoist group, was having a rally. And the Ku Klux Klan showed up and shot 5 of the members. Now, the City Council of Greensboro just passed a resolution. This is 41 years ago. Just passed a resolution apologizing for the fact that the local police knew that the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party were planning to assassinate the leaders of the Communist Party, of the Communist Workers' Party, and, they did nothing. So the city of Greensboro, after 41 years, has finally passed a resolution apologizing for what was essentially a government assassination. I mean, we know that there were members of the FBI, informers of the FBI, and agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Firearms, and Tobacco that were in the Ku Klux Klan's caravan. There's even a video of the assassination. So it's quite a horrendous historical event. Most people don't know about the Greensboro massacre, but now the City Council of Greensboro, North Carolina, has officially apologized. But speeding up to other news, Nancy Pelosi is introducing, this legislation about giving the Congress the ability to be in on the potential removal of the president under the 25th Amendment. Meanwhile, in Michigan, they've uncovered this plot by right-wing extremists to kidnap the governor. And the Justice Department has announced they've uncovered this plot. Now, I, for one, I'm certainly no fan of right-wingers and certainly not a fan of these guys that did this, But, you never know with this kind of thing, right? I mean, innocent until proven guilty, and I'm sorry, but, the counterterrorism divisions of the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice are known to make things up about Muslims when they're targeting them. They are known to make things up about left-wing activists when they target them. So why should I trust them just because they're going after right-wingers? I don't buy that argument. At the end of the day, it sounds to me like there are a lot of elements on the right wing that are very, very potentially violent and dangerous. And it sounds like these guys, I read what was in the indictment, but, they'll get their day in court, and I don't trust the government apparatus necessarily. But it looks to me like, and now we also know about Facebook. In case you haven't heard about this, Facebook has been removing people and groups and organizations from Facebook, groups that are not necessarily advocating violence, but might be tied to violence offline. So Facebook groups are being removed, not for anything they said, and not for anything the organization actually did, but based on Facebook's suspicion that they could be tied to people that engage in violence off the internet. For example, all the QAnon groups are being banned. All the Antifa Facebook groups are being banned. Facebook is engaging in this crackdown on groups, both on the left and the right, that they consider to be linked to violence offline. Now, explain that to me. How is it that someone can be linked to violence offline? Is there a procedure? Can you appeal this? That's pretty wild. That's the new procedure that Facebook is using to remove people. That's pretty wild. What else is new? I'm just going over news items. Obviously, we're all still reacting to Kamala Harris and Kamala Harris and Mike Pence's debate. I did a reaction live to that debate, and it seems like a lot of what I predicted about Kamala Harris is starting to come true. Donald Trump is tweeting out about, look at what Donald Trump said about the Democrats and legislation, and hate to say I told you so, hate to say I called it, but, I tend to be good at predicting world events. I tend to have a good grasp on the trends in the world, and what's been going on. So, there you go. Now, folks, in other news, other items that might be worth discussing, the economy obviously not doing too well. There's negotiations going on about what kind of bailout would happen economically. Donald Trump is not, it looks like there might not be more debates. There may not be more debates. It looks like Donald Trump, though, he's planning some kind of rally in Florida, but no debates. This is a wild election. A very, very wild election, folks. Never seen anything like it. I'm here in New York City. There's a lot of controversy here in New York City because the Orthodox Jewish community feels like it's being unfairly targeted, and that it's being told to shut down its religious services and gatherings, and they're quite fired up. A lot of Roman Catholics are feeling the same way, and there's a lot of tension locally, and that's been going on locally. Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. Did you watch the free and equal debate? I did not watch the, is this referring to a specific debate, Sean, the free and equal debate? I don't know what you are referring to specifically. If that refers to a specific debate, I did not watch it. But I'm always curious to watch internet debates, read different books and such. But listen, folks, since I've already got one super chat there, why don't we, at this moment, since we're here, why don't we do a roll call? Right? Why not do a roll call? I'll call you out as I see you. I will call you out as I see you. And if that was a third-party debate in which there were third-party candidates, I will watch it. That sounds fascinating to me. And people are saying that I'm seeing in the chat that this refers to a third-party debate. I am sorry I missed it. I am going to check it out. I will make a point of watching that because I have a lot of free time on my hands. So I will check it out. So I see Rod Dog in England. Right? Who else? Who else is with us today? Names and locations. Peter from Poland. Peter from Poland. Very good. Very, very good. Who else is with us? Jack Dundee in the United Kingdom. Sam in Los Angeles. Miguel in Puerto Rico. Yugoslavia. Mohsen from Iran. New Jersey Mom's Basement says Pasta Bazooka. Georgia Chan. Springfield, Missouri. Nate in Utah. Balthazar in Oakland, California. Morocco, Long Island, New York, Argentina, Austin, Texas, George Kraft, Jesus from Spain, right? Filippo, right? Who else is with us? I said someone wrote California. Richie in Staten Island, John in St. Louis. Ramiro says, what's up, Caleb? What's up to you? Max from Arlington, Virginia. Bill from the United States. Harold Sullivan in Florida. Great, folks. Cincinnati, Ohio. Jenny Lynn, always with us. Wow, very good. Austin from Massachusetts. Justice, Alabama. People's Republic of China, Denver, Colorado, Amsterdam, Joanne. Right? People see Pakistan has banned TikTok. That's a little bit of a disappointment. Many people feel that's not right. Washington State. But you have to remember, Pakistan is a very religious country. Toronto. And they said that TikTok exposes people to indecent material. Pakistan has banned TikTok. I don't think that's the right move. And you have to wonder if that was part of the efforts of anti-China lobbyists. Vallejo, California, Jason Sarna is with us, but, the reason given was a religious one. They felt it was indecent. Divided states, Florida. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Farhad, California, Iran diaspora. Yes, Pakistan and China are close, but they took this move, which people are not thrilled about. Iran is expanding its energy apparatus. Dante from SoCal is with us, Sydney, Australia. Iran is expanding its energy production apparatus, its ability to do electricity. Iran already supplies quite a bit of electricity to Iraq. Denver, Colorado, Munda Skeptical. Jose from Albuquerque, Spring, Texas. Cheers from Northern Michigan. Hello from London, United Kingdom. All corporate media is obscene, says Kinky, and I would agree with that. Not in the same way that I'm sure the Pakistani officials feel about TikTok, but yes, it's obscene in its own way. Its own way, folks. Its own way. What else is new? New president of Costa Rica. Worcester, Massachusetts. Dylan. Shout out to you, Dylan. It's funny, near where I grew up, there's a town called Worcester, but it's not spelled that way. Do you think that the DSA and the PSL will stay popular? What does stay popular mean? DSA, I've often argued that DSA is kind of like, it's kind of like a coat, In the wintertime, you wear your coat, but in the summertime, you put your coat in the closet. But in the wintertime, you take your coat out again. And I feel like DSA is kind of like that. Biden versus Trump in foreign policy. All right. Biden, Harris, Trump versus Trump foreign policy. All right. DSA, it first started in the early 80s. And at the time in the early 80s, the Maoist movement was collapsing. But you had a lot of leftover 1960s radicals. A lot of people that had been communists in the 1960s. And the Maoist movement collapsed, and the Trotskyist movement was getting weird, and so out of, in the 80s, all of a sudden you had Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee and Michael Harrington, who'd served in the administration of Lyndon Johnson. Michael Harrington was, tied to Max Shachtman, just a long-time State Department socialist. He came out with this magazine called In These Times, and he announced that he was forming Democratic Socialists of America, or Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee. And it was kind of like, look, you've all been communists for so long. Look at the 1970s. Things haven't gone well. Come on board In These Times. We are not communists, right? The Democratic and Democratic Socialist meant not communist. And, the Socialist Party had kind of collapsed and split into three different factions. And DSA was kind of this new, sexy formation that a lot of ex-communists could join. It was non-Leninist, and it was anti-communist basically, but it was kind of as the communist movement in the United States started to decline, a lot of the people left over from the New Left and 60s could join to it. Now, Socialist Party USA, that was a faction that was very strongly against the Vietnam War, and that was the faction. There was three factions. The Socialist Party of America, the old Eugene Debs party, collapsed, okay? Collapsed into three factions. The first faction was Socialist Party USA. They were the faction that was against the Vietnam War. Thoughts on white nationalists disappointed with Trump? Okay. White nationalists, Trump, disappointed. PSL split from WWP. Okay. All right, and DSA kind of emerged, and they were big for a while. I'm not familiar with that economist. They were big for a while. Then you didn't really hear from them. They were just kind of, and then in the 90s, on the early 90s, you had John Sweeney getting elected to be the head of the AFL-CIO and kind of a rise in kind of organized labor stuff. All of a sudden, you heard about DSA again. Then you didn't hear about them. During the Iraq War days, when the Iraq War was being protested, that's when I was first getting political, 2003, 2004, you didn't hear about DSA. I mean, it was there, it existed, but it was like a banquet that happened once a year or something. You didn't hear about DSA. Then the first time I really started to notice DSA in my political life, like there was actually like suddenly was during Occupy Wall Street. I remember the first day of Occupy Wall Street. It looked like the anarchist black bloc, but there was a group of people with hoods over, like masks on their faces and a big banner that said Democratic Socialists of America. They were circling Zuccotti Park, and just circling it with their like red flags. And I thought it was weird. I said, why is DSA, well, first of all, where has DSA been? I've been an activist for a long time. And why do they look like the anarchist black bloc? That was the first I ever heard of DSA. But yeah, during the Bernie Sanders campaign, DSA was very, very, visible in recruiting. And DSA, Jacobin magazine is a DSA kind of outfit. The ISO was part of it, but now the ISO has dissolved into DSA. And most of the time, I think the ruling class of the United States would prefer not to have a mass social democratic movement. They would prefer not to, right? They want free market capitalism. But, times like these, where there's a lot of unrest and a lot of people are unhappy, they'll pull DSA out of the closet. And that's been my position. That's kind of how DSA tends to be, is when the ruling class needs them, all of a sudden they're there and they're visible and there's lots of funding and they're doing their thing. And when the ruling class doesn't need them, they go away, right? And during the Iraq War, the ruling class was pretty unified around the Iraq War, so you didn't see DSA. You saw the RCP, you saw the Workers' World Party, you saw a lot of the ML groups that were big during that time. The Communist Party was big, and United for Peace and Justice and stuff. But you did not see the DSA because the ruling class didn't need them, right? DSA, Lawrence of Arabia, all right. Okay. All right, but we'll start hammering out the rest of these. Biden-Harris versus Trump foreign policy. Honestly, I wonder, okay? Now, Joe Biden is very much an advocate of the Iran nuclear deal, but I really doubt that there'll be a reopening of the Iran nuclear deal if Biden wins. I feel like Trump nailed the door shut. Trump, by killing Qasem Soleimani, free will or determinism. All righty. And I feel like Trump nailed the door shut there. And that Biden personally would probably prefer an Iran nuclear deal. That's where he's at, but I don't think it's possible. Harris, I think, is the Hillary Clinton State Department. She's all about staging color revolutions and destabilizations. Trump's foreign policy has been schizophrenic. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. That's very clear. I mean, there are different people within the Trump administration putting for different things. Mike Pompeo is the face of evil, but there are some isolationist elements in the Trump administration. Trump is confused, right? I do think, however, that the way this election is panning out, so many Bush supporters, George W. Bush himself, John Bolton, are supporting Biden at this point, that I really doubt. I feel like there won't be a foreign policy shift. Under Obama, there was a foreign policy shift. They went from neocon, giving the middle finger to the rest of the world, to soft power manipulation. That was Obama. The Bush years, the neocon stuff hadn't worked out too well. So Obama came in and he was, resetting relations with the Muslim world, resetting with Russia, while covertly funding, the Muslim Brotherhood and terrorist groups and setting the stage for the Arab Spring and Hillary Clinton's strategy. But now I feel like so many neocons, Dan Kovalik, Obama didn't lift all sanctions. Of course he didn't lift all sanctions. But Obama was more in favor of negotiating, and he opened things up with Cuba quite a bit, and that was a little bit of a shift. But I'm thinking that because so many neocons are in the Biden camp, Biden has done a lot of reassuring. Like, he will not lift sanctions on Iran, he has said. He might want to renegotiate the nuclear deal. I doubt that'll happen. Biden has also, Biden has indicated that he is in favor of a coup and putting Juan Guaido in power in Venezuela. So I'm not really sure how much will change. If anything, foreign policy under Biden and Harris might get more hawkish. I don't know. However, I think under Biden and Harris, U.S. foreign policy will be less erratic. Right? With the Trump administration, one day they're negotiating with North Korea, the next day they're not. One day they're escalating with Iran, the next day, and the next day they're pulling troops out of Syria, and that there's an erratic character to the Trump administration's foreign policy. I think that a Biden-Harris administration's foreign policy will be much more consistent. But I really don't think it'll be back to the Obama soft power years. I mean, Kamala Harris comes out of that soft power, color revolution trend. That's what she comes out of. But so many neocons have been absorbed into that. I think we're going to be dealing with just kind of a straight up establishment foreign policy. So yeah, okay, alrighty. White nationalists disappointed by Trump. I mean, I don't know. I mean, white nationalism is awful. I have no. I mean, it's awful, right? I mean, they're disappointed by Trump. Why? He hasn't fomented race war. He hasn't slaughtered every black person and forcibly deported them from the country. I mean, what? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just, yeah, okay. I saw that Richard Spencer endorsing Biden. Obama didn't lift all sanctions as promised. That's true. After the Iran nuclear deal, new sanctions were imposed. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump is not a white nationalist. I mean, he panders sometimes to those elements. He's not one. He's not, right? I mean, so I mean, of course, white nationalists aren't going to be satisfied with Donald Trump because Donald Trump has not fulfilled their agenda, right? I believe at this point, those who advocate white nationalism, what they say they're in favor of is some kind of white ethno-state, some kind of separatist enclave within the United States. Donald Trump isn't doing absolutely nothing to create that. So, of course, they're going to be disappointed, right? I can't explain what goes on in the minds of white nationalists because I'm not one. I actually have a great video when one of these white nationalists in Russia, of all places, I was in Russia at the World Youth Festival, and a white nationalist confronted me and wanted to know my opinion of white nationalism. And I ripped white nationalism to shreds, actually, at a youth workshop with a number of Russian students. So, I've debated white nationalists before. I'm opposed to what they stand for. And I mean, Donald Trump, at the end of the day, Donald Trump might pander to them around issues like immigration. I mean, he doesn't agree with them either. I mean, Donald Trump works for Donald Trump, so whatever. All right, why did PSL break away from Workers' World Party? It was a fight about money. It was a fight about power and money. At that point in 2004, the Workers' World Party was at the center of a coalition called the Answer Coalition, Act Now, Stop War and End Racism. You have to remember that at that point, a lot of people were protesting against the war in Iraq. And, the Workers' World Party, that was like the most influence they'd had in a long time, right? They had the permits and they set up the stage and they were running the big rallies in Washington, D.C. There were disagreements about how they should operate while they did that, okay? And the people who lead PSL were the leaders of the Answer Coalition who didn't agree with the way Workers' World Party was pushing them to operate the Answer Coalition. They wanted independence, so they started a new party. That's what happened. There was a history, there was some back and forth. Workers' World likes to tell people that Answer is racist. So classy, such a classy thing to say. Right. Meanwhile, the Answer Coalition, sometimes they make it out like it was a big ideological dispute. As somebody who was in Workers' World Party for 8 years following the split and talking to a number of people in both groups, what I have deduced is pretty much this was a fight over the control of the Answer Coalition and its funds. That's what happened, is who controls the Answer Coalition. And I will say this, and, take what you want from this, right? Be happy with it or don't. I will say that PSL is a lot more entrepreneurial than Workers' World. PSL, they are all about, glossy magazines and well-printed signs, and they're a lot more whiz-bang, sparkle, glitter. I mean, they're better at it. I mean, they're better salesmen. They're better entrepreneurs. They are more marketing-oriented, and that, you look at Workers' World newspaper, it's black and white, doesn't have a cover on it, it's just text on the cover. I mean, it's, the PSL is a little more of a professional whiz-bang, sparkle, glitter. Look at their website, look at the Workers' World website. PSL, they're a little more, I don't know what you want to call it, mass marketable. And I think that, as somebody who spent a long time in Workers' World, I was always trying to get them to be more like that. I realize, why the PSL, if there's a lot of money on the line, right? If running the Answer Coalition is this vehicle that brings in a lot of donations and stuff, why you might walk. I understand why they might walk. I disagree with both of those groups because they both aim to be king of the protest cage. That's their goals. They want to be king of the protest cage. They don't care about reaching the broad masses of people who've never been to a left-wing protest, right? And they're anti-intellectual. They both have a very anti-intellectual bent to them. That if you study Marx and Lenin, well, you're a big nerd, and we actually organize stuff. That's the best line ever, right? PSL, Workers' World, a lot of other groups too. We actually do something. Well, of course you do something. The question is, what do you do? right? I mean, I'm doing something. I'm doing YouTube lives. I mean, there's other groups that do something. They campaign for Democrats. The question is not whether or not you do something. The question is, what do you do, and is that what you should be doing? Now, but if you criticize PSL, you criticize Workers' World, they're going to roll their eyes at you and say, yeah, well, we actually do something. Well, no shit, you do something. No one disagrees with you, okay? And that's like the oldest put down, right? And if you don't like a group, mind you, quote, they don't do anything. Well, there you go. Anyway, okay, Lawrence of Arabia. Well, it's a movie. It's about the life of Thomas Edward Lawrence, who was a British intelligence officer who went to the Middle East to stir up a revolt against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. It's a good movie. It's a Hollywood classic. It's a little bit racist. I always thought that the part in the movie where they kind of make fun of Arabs for not believing in paper money is a little bit racist. It makes the Arabs look like they're buffoons or something. And there's a little bit of a condescension. There's a little bit of a white savior thing going on where he lectures them about tribal divisions. I want all the Arab people to be one. I don't know. It's Hollywood. But, Thomas Edward Lawrence, he was this British Army, British intelligence guy who, went to the Arab world and led an uprising against the Ottoman Empire. That's all there is to it. He was that's all there is to it. They made a movie about his life, and it's a classic movie. It's a classic Hollywood movie. It's just supposed to be one of the big epic movies of Hollywood. I saw it when I was a kid, I think. I remember my dad wanted me to watch classic movies, so that was on the list of classic movies my father decided our family would watch. So I remember watching Lawrence of Arabia. He died in a motorcycle accident. Someone alludes to, there were some weird sex scandals and stuff that happened before that. Some people speculate he may have committed suicide. It may not have been an accident. He was famous, and then there were some weird sex scandals about, stuff he was doing. But then even all of that's not clear. Was he gay? Was he a sadomasochist? Nobody really knows. There's a lot of rumor and speculation about what happened. But it's a good movie. Someone asked. Okay, free will or determinism. Well, I feel like in some ways we all want to believe we have absolute total free will, right? That gives you this sense of power. I can make the decision, right? And a lot of self-help stuff, right? And that I remember when I was a kid, that was really free. The concept of free will was just constantly pushed. I grew up in a very conservative area. So it was all about free will, right? There was a book, there was a book published, I remember, by Judge Judy. Right? It was a children's book, Win or Lose by How You Choose, right? And it was all about you make the decision, right? But then the issue of determination, right, is that, people's decisions tend to be impacted by the lives they lead, right? And the conservatives and advocates of the free market, right, everything that everyone does is their own choice, right? You chose this, you chose that. They ignore the fact that people's choices take place in a context, right? That people never make choices in a vacuum. People always make choices in a context. And you'll always have outliers, right? People are in a context where the social reward seems to be one thing, they will act against it. And that always exists. But at the end of the day, though, people tend to, the group, the bulk of humans will make choices based on whatever is in their economic interest. Whereas there are always outliers, like me, right? The choices I've made in life to get where I am don't make any sense. But they do make sense for me. They wouldn't make sense to most people from my circumstances or, who grew up where I grew up or had parents like I had. You know what I mean? They make sense for me, though. The more you look into me, there's a reason I made those choices. So the question is, does free will really exist or not, right? And the political end of it is, especially conservatives, everything's a matter of free will. We shouldn't help poor people. They made the life choices that made them poor. Same age as you, was so excited to see V for Vendetta. Great, yeah, it's a great movie. They made the choice, they made the decision, so they must suffer the consequences. They love the death penalty. They love, locking people in jail for a long time. They made the choice, right? And then you have this other wing of things, like postmodernism argues that no one has any free will. People always just do what their biology and their life circumstances and material, I don't know. I don't know. I like to believe that free will exists on some level, but I do believe that free will is heavily, heavily influenced. And that part of the struggle that every human goes through, I think part of maturity, is struggling to assert your free will, right? And I think that that's very important, that as you grow up, when you come to understand yourself and come to understand what drives your behavior, right, and gaining more free will, gaining the ability to make decisions, to take hold of yourself and say, self, this is what we're going to do, right, and push back against the grain is part of maturity. And that's like a daily battle we all have. And that a lot of people are very, very unaware of their own circumstances, or of their own impulses, their own drives, their own motivations. People, you ask somebody in jail, why did you do this? They say, I don't know why I did it. And they're being honest. They're not lying to you. They say, I don't know why I did it. What is the number one reason? The number one reason people stop being drug addicts? According to every study that has ever come out, what is the number one reason people give up drugs? I just stopped. That's what they say. The number one reason. The number one reason people stop being drug addicts. It's not AA or NA or any of those programs. It's not, methadone. It's not therapy. The number one reason people stop being drug addicts is, quote, I just stopped. And what that means is, no, not rock bottom, just I just stopped. That is the number one reason. They just stopped. What that means is that there was a reason they were using drugs, and that reason came to an end. And they never knew what that reason was. They were not aware of what was subconsciously driving them to drink or to use drugs, and they were not aware of what changed, right? That something happened subconsciously. There was a real motivation for them to use the substance, and that motivation came to an end, and that they, for whatever reason, are not aware of what drives their behavior, right? That's the primary, so that's what that there is to it, right? And the idea is that part of growing up as a human being is figuring out why you do things, right? If you drink, you figure out why you're drinking. And based on that, you can figure out why you stop, right? And that's part of being an adult. Do things, figuring out why you do things in order to figure out how you can have more free will. So I think overall that free will does exist to some degree or other. However, I will say that it's really overblown in this society. That's my answer to that question, that free will exists to some degree or other, but in order to really have free will, you must be really, really, really self-aware. And that every day, that it is a struggle to maintain your free will, because at the end of the day, you have to really know yourself in order to truly have free will. You have to understand what drives you. That's my understanding of the concept. I tried to answer it from a psychological as well as philosophical angle. It exists to some degree or other, though. No, I'm not speaking out against anything. That anyone who's an addict, I am encouraging them to seek the help of mental health professionals. I'm encouraging them to do everything. I'm just telling you what is an objective fact, which is that the number one, according to every study, the number one reason people stop being addicts, the number one reason is, quote, I just stopped, which means that they are not aware of what drove them to do it, and they're not aware of why they stopped. I just stopped means they don't know. The number one, when asked in every survey why they stopped using drugs, the number one answer is basically it's I don't know, I just stopped. And that indicates a lack of free will. That's what I'm saying. So, that's all I'm saying. But yes, if you're struggling with an addiction, by all means, do whatever you think you can do. Do whatever you think you can do to stop your addiction. Being an addict is an awful way of being. I have never struggled with addiction, thank goodness, but I know people whose lives have been destroyed. I know people whose family members have been destroyed by it. It's ugly. Alcoholism is ugly. Opioid addiction is ugly. Heroin is ugly. There are other pornography addiction. There's a lot of marriages have been destroyed by pornography addiction. And, any moment where you feel like you are out of control, you are compulsive, I would encourage you to fight back against it. But in order to do that, you're going to have to become more self-aware. And I think we all struggle to be self-aware in order to have more self-control, in order to have more free will. Bill Clinton. Well, Bill Clinton, right? He is the son of, he never met his father. His father died before he was born. Single mom, he and his brother. He and his brother, advice for Trump, right, advice for Trump supporter. And then I got to go because I can't be on here too much longer. So don't. But anyway, Bill Clinton, son of a single mother, very articulate young man. Realized at a young age he was very, very good at public speaking, probably was very good at cheering his mother up on a rainy day. Abusive stepfather came, abusive stepfather went. Many people said that Bill Clinton has developed what they call a whore Madonna complex, where he sees women in two ways. He sees them either as infallible goddesses that he worships, or he sees them as dirty sluts and whores that he can molest. Right? I mean, Bill Clinton's a sexual predator. That's a fact. We all know that. And that he divides women into two categories based on probably his experiences with his single mother, right? On some level, he worshipped his single mother. On some level, he hated her, but he splits it. Right, that Bill Clinton splits it. Very articulate guy, rose up in politics in Arkansas because he realized at a young age he was very articulate, was a Rhodes Scholar, right? The Rhodes Scholar program, that's Cecil Rhodes. It was set up. It's an institution for kind of, they find people that look like they are in line with the ideals of British American capitalism, right? And it's the Rhodes Scholar program. I mean, a lot of the leading people in the United States were Rhodes Scholars, and you're selected for the Rhodes Scholar if they think you have kind of the mindset of British and American politics. It's if you're somebody they'd like to have in government. He's a Rhodes Scholar, Harvard, Yale. He went through the route, the Ivy League schools. That's where U.S. leaders come from. Went back to Arkansas, got into politics, had Hillary Clinton as his wife. Started rising in the Democratic Party in the 80s because he was anti-left. He started purging the left. His Democratic Leadership Council was set up, and that was a vehicle to drive the progressives and socialists and Rooseveltians out of the Democratic Party. He really hated Jerry Brown, the governor of California. They were rivals. Jerry Brown said something like, Bill Clinton has started a new Democratic Party run by lobbyists and big corporations. I'm not a part of it. Hated Jerry Brown. He was the right wing of the Democratic Party. He did a lot of dog whistling to racists, kind of a lot of his message. He was governor of Arkansas, right? Arkansas, former Jim Crow state. And one of his kind of messages to people in Arkansas was, don't worry, if you're a racist, you can still be a Democrat, right? People saw the Democratic Party as a party that fought for civil rights and such. Well, his message was, don't worry, racists are still at home in the Democratic Party. He did a photo op with a chain gang, very famously, right? And, he was this white guy standing next to, a group of black, convicts, working, right? And it's photo op. Look at me, I'm the white boss standing next to a group of black people, right? He gave a rant during his presidential campaign against a rapper, Sister Souljah, right? And it was just this, how she was anti-white and it was offensive to white people. I'm not familiar with that podcast. During his presidential campaign, he actually stopped his presidential campaign and went back to Arkansas to execute a black man. Very famous incident. He was very much making the message that don't worry, you can be racist and be a Democrat. Don't worry, Democrats are not the party of black people anymore. But at the same time, I will say, Bill Clinton, it's kind of like Obama, where you have the populism in the tone, but the actual substance is very, very mild. If you listen to Bill Clinton, it came from a little... All right, Bill Clinton. Let me get Bill Clinton here. Let me do this. I came from a little place called Hope. A little place called Hope. I'm Bill Clinton. I love America. I came from a little place called Hope. That's Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton, you listen to his election speech, a little place called Hope. He's from a place called Hope, Arkansas. I came from a little place called Hope. I'm Bill Clinton. I love America. I'm going to bring you hope, America. Yeah. Bill Clinton, you listen to him, he sounds like Huey Long. He sounds like a populist, unless you read the words he says. It's like Obama. Obama sounded like a revolutionary. He sounded like Malcolm X. He sounded like Martin Luther King Jr. until you read the actual words he said, right? The actual words were just normal political bullshit. But there was this tone, a little place called Hope. It sounded like, Bill Clinton sounded like a Southern populist. He sounded like Huey Long. He wasn't Huey Long, though. He was Bill Clinton. Barack Obama sounded like Malcolm X, sounded like Martin Luther King, but he was Barack Obama. The actual words were standard bullshit. But forgive me for swearing, but the tone, exuded this like revolutionary optimism. And that's how Bill Clinton and Obama are similar. They actually have similar life stories too, with the single mom, with the abusive stepfather, all of that. What advice do I have for a Trump supporter? Well, look, if you're a Trump supporter, I understand. I understand why you're disgusted with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the party of phonies. The Democratic Party is very much a party that wreaks contempt for average Americans, that not only the average Americans in the Republican Party, but even more so the average Americans who vote for them, right? The Democratic Party is the party of elitism. It's the party of selling out. It's the party of political deception. So I understand why you would hate the Democratic Party, and I understand why you might think that Donald Trump is a revolutionary. I think you might think Donald Trump is going to turn up the apple cart. But, part of me, I certainly did not vote for Donald Trump, but I was optimistic when he got in. I hoped that maybe since this guy's built some hotels, maybe he'd build us some infrastructure. Was hoping that maybe this guy he says he's not going to, adventure around the world. He's done toppling regimes. I thought he might actually mean that. The last 4 years have been a nightmare. Free market economics, escalating international stuff. Look at the country right now. With COVID-19, it's falling apart. I think Donald Trump is not turning up the apple cart. But that said, this Nancy Pelosi clique, this, Hillary Clinton, State Department faction, the people who brought us Kamala Harris, who are looking, they're scary as well. And they want a huge crackdown. They want to silence people, So, I'm not a big fan of them either. They are certainly frightening. So there's a lot. I'm not endorsing either candidate, and I don't endorse any candidate. But I'm just being honest with you. I don't think either of the major candidates are any good. Okay, I'm just being real. Trump has been a nightmare, and the Obama years, which Joe Biden was vice president, were a bit of a nightmare. And you couldn't have had Trump without Obama, right? The two complement each other. So I'm not for Trump. I'm not for Biden. I am just for socialism. I think we need socialism, and that's the only way we're going to get out of this, is if we have a government of action that fights for working families. So, I don't hate you, Mr. Trump supporter. I think you're wrong in admiring Trump. I think you are wrong. I don't admire Trump, but I don't hate you. And the Democratic National Committee hates you. It also hates all the Democrats, and it hates Bernie Sanders and all of that. But, I don't hate you, right? I think you're wrong. And we need to get back to that. Whatever happened to thinking someone's wrong, but not hating them? There's plenty of Marxists out there that I think are wrong. I don't hate them. Right? Whatever happened to that? Why is it that nowadays, if somebody disagrees with you on something, you have to hate them? Right? It's like real politics involves working with people with whom you disagree. Just saying, right? It's part of, I'm sorry, if you're ever going to get anything done in the real world, not just in Facebook arguments, but in the real world, you have to work with people with whom you disagree. You have to be able to say to somebody, well, I don't agree with you on this, but I agree with you on this. Let's work together. Pretty basic stuff. Pretty basic stuff. Pretty basic. So on that note, folks, I think we're going to wrap this up. It's been fun. I just wanted to hop on here and do this real quick. But it's time to wrap up. Ever since World 3, 2, why am I saying 3, 2, 1? That's weird. All right. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, the people of all countries must get prepared. Revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Have a good night, folks.